Hi, Nancy here. Welcome to the Paint Your Garden channel. I love making greeting cards for family and friends, and so I thought I would make a card today. I've already got the tracing and it's already been transferred. Now the tracing, when I'm in a hurry, sometimes I will use a copyright-free image, and I have a few design books that I will refer to. Today I will be using just the Winsor and Newton Watercolor ProMarkers and also a black micron pen. Now, the design that I chose came from a book by Charlene Tarbox called Floral Designs and Motifs, and it's for artists, needle workers, and craftspeople. And if you are concerned, on the inside flap, you can read that you may use the designs and illustrations for graphics and crafts applications free and without special permission. So I selected one with some violets and traced it onto the tracing paper and then transferred it to a card with some graphite paper. Now I will use today some watercolor paper, 140-pound cold press Strathmore. It's considered a student paper. It comes in a pad, but I really like it. It's great for cards, and there is no bleed through on the back side when you use markers or paint. And it's 90 pounds, so it is rather thin, but it does seem to work very well for cards. Now I cut out precisely a 7 by 10 piece of paper, so you will have some strips left over, and I usually use those for practice or color mixing swatches, so they don't go to waste, or bookmarks. I also use quite a bit of hot press paper because I like to use pens, so I have an Arches 7 by 10 pad which I will use, or a block. And it's not precisely, if you do take a measurement, it's not precisely 7 inches by 10 inches, so I need to trim off some of that. And I also like to mark the center of the paper where I don't paint on the back side of the card. Sometimes I will put a piece of tape on that. But if I don't cut it precisely, then the card will not fit in a 5 by 7 envelope, so that's why I want to trim off those extra edges. After I finish it, of course. It's on a block right now, so I work on the block. Now, if I'm using one of the Strathmore papers, I will tape that to a surface, either a board, or in what I'm going to do today, I'm going to tape it to a clipboard. Now, I like to put the sentiment on the outside, but sometimes if I think that could make a little painting that could be framed, then I'll put the sentiment on the inside of the card. You can see that design does fit nicely on an 8 by 10 mat. I've taped the paper to a clipboard. I'm going to be using dioxazine violet, cerulean blue hue, cadmium yellow hue, sap green, and hooker's green dark. Now the hues on the cerulean and cadmium show that that conforms to safety standards, so you don't have to worry about the cadmium or anything in the cerulean causing a health issue. These are the pens. They're dual-tipped. The first one, or the finer one, is just a fine point for smaller spaces or for outlining things. And on the other side is a flexible brush nib, and that is good for larger areas. I'm very impressed with these markers. They are very convenient. They're rich in saturation. That's real Winsor and Newton watercolor in those, and they work beautifully. I really enjoy using them, especially for cards and sketchbook work. Those are the extra pieces that came off of the piece of 9 by 12 Strathmore. So I use those. If you need to warm up, sometimes it's a good idea to warm up. Now I have the 2 small filberts that I will use, and also a very, very tiny detail brush, about a 20 by 0. You can see that I've taped it down to a clipboard so it doesn't move around on me. And I'm going to take the fine point and start to work on one of the flowers here, one of the larger flowers, because I think it will be easier to see. I'm going to fill in one of the petals, but I'm going to leave about a 1/16 of an inch around the outside of the petal. and I'm going to outline it with the purple. Then I'll take the smaller filbert brush and get it pretty wet, not dripping, but pretty wet, and move around that cerulean blue. And when I finish moving that around and get it good and wet, then I'm going to dab the purple and get it to run into the blue and just let them mix a little bit. You get some interesting patterns. And the next petal I will do will be one that is not up against the other one because I don't want them running into each other. I want them to dry separately and not run in and make a big mess. So doing the same procedure, then I will come back in when I get farther along because it is very repetitious. I will drop down to one of the lower left leaves and I am filling in with the sap green. I could use the larger nib to fill that larger area in, no problem. Then I will outline it with the Hooker's Green Dark. Same procedure as with the petals. I will use the larger filbert brush to move the paint around, and if I need to control the water, I have a paper towel in my hand so I can dab some of the excess water if it's too wet. I'm going to just kind of dab around the edges to get the dark green to mix. I probably could have used a little warm-up because I had to do a little repair work on the first couple ones that I did, so I would suggest maybe a little practice might help on one of those strips of paper before you get started, just to warm up a little bit. Now that's a really tiny space on that far left flower, so I'm going to use just a very fine area of cerulean blue and try to outline it and use that very tiny liner brush or that very tiny detail brush to get it wet because it's such a small space. Now you can also use the markers this way. You can actually take a wet brush and get the paint directly from the nib. And if you just need a little bit, I wanted to kind of beef up that cerulean blue a little bit, so add a little bit more. So you can use them that way as well. Okay, it's quite repetitious, so I will leave for a few minutes and make some progress and I'll be back. I'm back, I've made some progress, and as you notice, I have used some pen work to fill in the stems because it was a bit confusing in the middle there, so I went ahead and did the inking on the stems just so I could see what I was doing a little bit better. But still working on the flowers, same procedure, done quite a bit of the leaves. I only have a couple leaves left. What I'm doing here, I wanted the stems to be a little bit lighter green, so I'm just getting a little bit of the sap green off of the marker and filling in. Sometimes I need to stop and re-wet the brush, but it's very easy. So I'm going over it with the cadmium yellow hue just to make it a little bit lighter so that the stems show up a little bit better. I'll be back for the pen work in just a few minutes. In the meantime, it needs to be completely dry before I start the pen work. Back now for the pen work, and I'm going to be using a Micron black ink pen, permanent ink, and it's a 01 size, a fairly fine point on it. I don't want to be too precise. I try to work fairly fast because I want to be loose with the pen work. I just think it looks a lot better. So you don't have to be real precise going around each petal and leaf. A few squiggly marks on the inside of the yellow area. Also around the edges of the leaves, and just a few light marks for the mid-vein of each leaf. And time for a signature. It's time to take the tape off, and it is complete. Now this camera doesn't quite show the intensity of the blue and the purple and the green, so I will show you a picture in a few minutes of what they actually look like. But I really love the markers. They're so convenient, and they have great saturation and no muss, no fuss. So I really do like these Winsor and Newton ProMarkers. So I've taken the tape off carefully. And I'm going to erase that center line. I usually just put that on there to keep me from going on to the back side of the card with paint or spatter. There's no need on this one, and as you can see, there's no bleed through at all, so that paper works great. Now, sometimes after I fold it and put the sentiments on, I will press them with a stack of books just to get that slight buckling out of the card. There it is. Looking good. Looks exactly like the first one. I took a picture with another camera to show you how beautifully saturated those markers are. Really nice color. The camera just didn't quite show it off as well as I would have liked. Well, making this card was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed those markers. I would appreciate a like and a subscribe. If you subscribe, you'll be notified of any future videos. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you next time.